Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The ceremony is about to begin. And to quote Bill Hicks, my Obi-Wan Kenobi, today a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration, that we're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we are the imagination of ourselves. Here's Tom with the weather.
Well, hello, boys and girls.
Hi.
What a wonderful day it is today in our money-based economy. Well, sit back and relax and get ready for the guy who's about to ruin everything.
I'm puzzled. Are you really seriously suggesting that Jesus Christ was a mushroom?
Wait, Jesus was a mushroom Roberts.
Yes. You are dealing with a secret cult, a secret society.
Welcome to Waning Interest.
Welcome to the Waning Interest Podcast, number uno dos, May 4th. Be with you, 2023. The babbling dabbler, the smallest click on the internet, the pinball brain in your favorite machine. It's like a diary or a book, but not as stale or coherent. From a more mentally challenged Forrest Gump. But, as I like to say, or if Mikey and Mouth from the Goonies played a lot of bareback leapfrog, and then a little while later, I said hi, and I'm still saying hi. Welcome. This is special. Gonna be special. Fixed audio things. I want this guy on my podcast all the fucking time. He fixes my shit, and he's not even here. I have to pay him. How could I pay him? I don't know. Nah, I don't grow those. I don't do that shit. Anyway, but because it's the 4th, May 4th be with you, something like that, I have to, it's not Whip 110. That's a good one, but they're all good. Have to show that because it's, Star Wars Day. And that's, enough of that. Yeah, that's enough of that because I'd rather bring this guy up who is an author, public speaker, fellow podcaster, and psychedelic babbler, James W. Jesso, who's here also to let me know that the W stands for Wayne.
Close.
Is it? How close is it? Whoop, shoot, wrong thing. Sorry.
How close?
That's
Somewhere between no and not even close. It stands for Wesley, actually.
Wesley.
Yes, my maternal grandfather's middle name as well. A bit of a legacy name.
I actually like that name better than mine. I've never liked my name. When I was in radio school, I used a buddy of mine's name from high school because I couldn't stand saying my name when we were on the air. That's cool. Wesley, James Wesley Jesso. Love the mushroom pick. You know what that reminds me of behind you? Did you see Mary Poppins Returns?
No, there's a sequel.
Yeah, it's got Emily Blunt. She does a really good job. And I have a still, and I wish I'd have thought about it. I could have done it a minute ago. Do I have it? I think I might have it in here, brother.
Well, while you pull that up, maybe I'll tell a little story about how this painting came into my life. So I was moving into a single bedroom apartment, my first time living by myself on my own, and doing so as a part of my coming into, you would say, like financial independence as a podcaster, independent from other work, that is. And I needed something for my new apartment. I was going shopping for frames because I have a bunch of art I collected over the years. Nothing particularly, super expensive, but things that I liked. And I go to this Goodwill, which is a kind of thrift store, charity shop, op shop, depending on the country you're in, or what you call them. And I walk in, and here's this painting. And it is actually an original painting signed by the author or the artist from like 1970 something, and it was there for 25 Canadian dollars. And apparently it had just gotten put out on the floor. So it felt like a destiny in the making or something, or perhaps fate, or the 50-year journey this painting took to land into my life. Hopefully was well worth it. But here it is in its place of honor up in my video frame for all podcasts that I appear visually on.
That's awesome. I don't have it. I don't know what I did with it, but basically there's a still. I took a screenshot of, there's a spot where Emily Blunt comes into it's basically the kids of the kid, one of the kids from the original movie, and she comes back and she's in their bedroom and sitting there talking to them right before they go into the bathroom and go into the tub and all this psychedelic shit. As she's standing there, right, just like over your shoulder and just look over mine, there's a picture with fucking mushrooms and I think there's little people on it. It's right there. They're just going, ugh. Can you tell? And nobody notices. It's fucking. I didn't notice either. This is me, like I said. And, you heard me say it in the open. I'm like Mikey in the Mouth from the Good. This is my one-eyed Willie. And how funny that mushrooms look like dicks.
It's I mean the iconography of mushrooms. It has different place in different societies, different cultures. And mushrooms, big mushrooms, little people. This is very iconic for our sort of culture, I guess, to represent the fantastical or the whimsical. Like lands with big strange mushrooms and fairies and elves and gnomes and all the rest is sort of like the mainstream iteration of what a fantasy world looks like. So not surprised that they would throw a little bit of that in there. I mean, from a cinematography or filmmaking perspective, throwing in these little nods that are, it's not subconscious, it's subliminal, sort of like, encouragement to, frame the experience of the movie or frame the narrative or the presentation of the movie with an added little sort of like oomph towards the fantastical. Or whatever direction it wants to take it, depending on the movie. But I'm not surprised to hear that kind of thing. There's all sorts of these little nods in there somewhere.
That explained for me my first heroic dose and sense of mushrooms was where to me I went, oh, this is what all the little people mean. I don't know if this happens to you. I've explained it before, but when I get somewhere in my peak, it's usually right after all my 10 minutes of yawning and the tears of healing that Bill Hicks talks about and everybody else does. Right around there, where all of a sudden it'll seem like there's a bunch of little people on my shoulder giggling. And it's not scary. I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. And then, but it's just like when you have a tick in your eye, what is it?
Like a twitch.
A twitch in your eye. And as soon as you look in the mirror, it stops. Same kind of thing where as soon as I turn my head like this, it stops. And then a few seconds later, I'll hear it on my other shoulder. I'm like, that's the Oompa Loompas. That's the Smurfs. That's the leprechaun. That's the gold. That is the gold at the end of the fucking rainbow is the trip going, ha ha, look at this shit. That's
Perhaps
why you can't find the leprechaun.
It's Yoda on your back in the swamps of Dagobah.
Dude,
I actually wrote a whole article about that with Luke Skywalker training in the swamps with Yoda as a parable for the mushroom journey, especially like going into the dark cave. I normally post it every year because I don't really have any Star Wars content. I'm more of a Trekkie myself, but that's an aside.
Don't blame you.
Anyways, we won't talk about Star Trek unless you really want to, because then I could go there. But yeah, talking about how, if we look at it as a metaphor or parable, you have the mushroom, which is Yoda, and it's just like on his back saying like, keep going, you can do this, while also like weaving in this wisdom. And then at some point being like, you need to go in and face your fears. And when you go to face your fears, what you realize is that the thing that you are most afraid of is actually yourself. And that, I mean, it's not like I think that they were necessarily making a nod to the mushroom, but like with any sort of mythical level story or like a story that, it captures the fundamental patterns or fundamental patterns of
It's the
consciousness of
hero's
being,
journey.
right? Then you'll be able to sort of like port that out and apply it elsewhere and utilize it in sort of different context to, explain or as reference for explaining or understanding different psychological processes. Like I'm reading a book right now called The Schizophrenia Complex by Eve Merrim. And there's quite a lot in here where she'll go into various stories and myths, parables, fairy tales as ways of explaining her theories around what schizophrenia is from an archetypal or Jungian perspective, because it's all, much of Jungian psychoanalysis or psychology is based on, looking at myth and archetype, right?
Mm-hmm. Why did I just bounce out for a second? That was weird. Huh. Why did I bounce out? I don't know. That scared me. Like another one, Wizard of Oz and Willy Wonka. Let's say those two. Like with Willy Wonka, right when they get to the golden ticket, when they get there to the factory and they go inside, it's all squirrely and stuff when he's taking them in before he opens the door and sings the imagination song. To me, that represents the come up. When it first starts to hit you and it feels like your brain's splitting apart when it's actually doing this, because it doesn't happen. You don't do this very often. So that's why it's a little scary for people if you don't know that's going to happen. Or, it's like the roller coaster, that first hill on the roller coaster. And then in The Wizard of Oz, the come up is the tornado. And then, whoa, little people. And wow, is it colorful here. Dude. And then, but the biggest thing, though, I to talk about with that, yes, the fun part of it with my first heroic dose, where I had luckily done, before I did, because I would only do an 1/8 at the most, and I was always like, what the hell, man? I wasn't listening to Terrence and Bill, which I've been listening to for years, saying heroic dose. And I was kind of afraid of that, and I'm just thinking, I'm going to taste something. And it was never enough. It was more like somebody's fucking tapping me on the shoulder and nobody's there. Stop doing that, man. Nothing's there. Nothing's happening. So I was in a pretty dark place my first heroic dose, and so it was kind of a fuck it moment when we split half an ounce. And one thing I noticed, luckily, was because I'd done also research with depression and stuff for it, and I've been pushing MAPS, doing the for the MDMA for PTSD for years, thanks to Claire, my friend Claire, letting me know about that years and years ago. But what I noticed within less than a day, that dark cloud that had been following me around for like 1.5 years, most of it was gone. And it lasted for about 2.5, 3 months, and I started feeling that little creep back in. Went, oh, that's every 3, 6, or 12 months, depending on the person. That's how I believe we should be doing it, and that's why we're so fucked up in this world, because we run on ego, because we're not doing our true religion to keep us from doing that. Oh, E.T. E.T.'s all about the whole thing. Phone home, that was ego death. E.T. phone home. And and the whole connection with
Never
the heart.
never thought of ET from that perspective, but I also haven't watched it in quite a long time. My partner, I believe, hasn't seen it. She hasn't seen a lot of movies, so we're gonna have to try to find one of the original versions, not the one where they replaced all the police officers' rifles with walkie-talkies or whatever.
Spielberg actually apparently just said that was a mistake. He just said that recently. Dude, when you go back through that, oh my God. Right at the beginning, they're showing the keys. Remember the key thing? You're always just seeing the keys from Peter Coyote.
It's been a long time, man. I don't really remember. I watched it a bunch of times as a kid, but
one of the biggest things, they pan through, and there's 2 kinds of mushrooms in that ship at the beginning of the movie. Meanwhile, there's a rabbit that comes up to E.T.
Well, a little added Star Wars trivia for May the 4th is there's a scene, I think it's in one of the prequels, I'm not sure which one, where it shows like the delegate of all the species, and one of the species is like ET species. I was like, oh, that's an interesting
I
nod.
think that's the Phantom Menace at the thing where they're like Congress or whatever. I can't remember what it's called. Oh, in this Star Wars special, that shitty Star Wars special,
Yeah, I tried to watch it once. It was
This time, go back.
it was a thing.
Just go through on YouTube when you find it. Just go through to the parts and see if you can find the thing where Lumpy is on the deck, and he's like, I think he's like walking along the handrail. It's ET music. There's ET music there.
Hmm.
Music that ended up being an ET a few years later is in that scene. You'll hear it, and you're like, I went, whoa, wait. So there's another ET Star Wars guy. Anyway.
I mean, something to be said is that, so much of the movies that came out of the 80s, they would have been inspired by either directly inspired by people's psychedelic experiences because of all the experimentation happening in the late 60s, early 70s, but also indirectly. There's so much media and so much sort of storytelling and a whole shift in maybe the underlying story sphere or meme sphere of Western civilization as a consequence of that the massive influx of psychedelic experiences amongst youth. So I'm not surprised if there would be several conscious or unconscious nods to psychedelic experiences in various media. I mean, actually, even Star Trek. So in Star Trek, so Star Trek obviously is its own whole complete universe onto itself, right? Everything interrelates with itself. Even the things that don't line up with the main storyline are held as sort of, variations in different timelines and blah, 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 blah. But in The Next Generation, there's an episode where they talk about telepathy, and the name of the quote neurotransmitter that is responsible for telepathy is psilocybin. Come on.
Oh,
They know.
well, dude, the Star Trek Discovery. Did you know? One of the characters is
Paul
named
Stamets.
after Paul Stamets, and I didn't watch it. I only saw the first episode, but apparently the core of the story is about a power thing that's run by spores.
Yeah, it's like there's like an intergalactic. That means inside the galaxy.
I just
There's
heard
an
I just heard the Beastie Boys in my head after you said that.
mushroom
Intergalactic
or mycelial web. There's like a intergalactic mycelial web that exists sort of like underneath material reality, and Paul Stamets is researching them and utilizing their spores as an energy. He develops a way to connect his consciousness with this mycelial web and then instantaneously drop out of physical reality and reemerge in a different place somewhere along the mycelial web as a way of travel, which is pretty cool. Yeah. The first two seasons, I liked Star Trek Discovery up until season 4. Felt like they were just trying to be too epic.
All this mushroom talk, I have to put my hoodie on. Oh, there's another thing at the end of ET. Well, the whole thing with Amanita muscaria, that the caribou in Siberia, that's their favorite. One of their favorite snacks.
The reindeer, yeah.
Right. Well, that's what
I've heard a lot of I've heard a lot of lore, like Western lore, and then I've heard some explicit detail. I'm not sure I can parse between what is actually real and what is journalism for Christmas time these days on social media, but yeah, from what I understand,
that's finally popping. I've been saying that shit to people for 17 years. And it was finally starts popping on the internet. I'm like, oh, people are making videos now. Yes, they're looking at it. But my point being that that is the reasoning why the reindeer can fucking fly, is because that's their favorite snack. So now take that to E.T. By the way, E.T. looks like a cross between a mushroom and a toad, right?
Never thought of it that way, but yeah, I guess so.
DMT, Elliot, E.T. When they fly at the end in the group, like the reindeer group, E.T. is wrapped in a white blanket and Elliot is wearing a red hoodie.
Oh, that's fun. That's a fun observation.
And at the end, what does E.T. say to Elliot? I'll be right here. What's that? I had to teach some Hindu people that I worked with what that dot on the forehead, they didn't even know. I don't even know. I went, It's the third eye, which gets cleaned off by the mushroom, so you can shake hands with the universe.
Well, I don't remember that part. I had thought he had pointed at the kid's chest,
No,
like
he puts
his heart, his forehead.
Well, no, but they communicate through the heart. That's why when E.T.'s drinking, Elliot's getting drunk. And what does Elliot do? What does he do when what's he get in trouble for? For releasing toads. So, and then you can, and then when you're tripping with somebody, you feel like you're communicating through your heart. That's one of the reasons why you're like, whoa, and people, you two can see, or three can see things that other people can't see. There was a great thing with Bill Hicks that, I think it's Kevin Booth telling the story of when they did a first heroic dose back in Texas or whatever that Hicks would reference in his comedy. And talking about how they saw shit without even speaking, and we're like, huh? Did you see? And I'm like, my first heroic dose with my buddy Tim, that was it, man. I was like, it was so fucking cool. Anyway, but the depression thing was the big thing. I mean, yes, it's fun. Yeah, you want to go every once in a while, but I also, people think, and I talk about this so much, probably you too, they think I trip all the time. Like maybe once a year. That's it. It still scares me. I still have to get all ready. I have a whole thing, and some people are like, come on, man, you're getting a little anal about this. No, man, this is religion to me.
Honestly, also the deeper it takes you in some respect, the more I have found that the deeper it's taken me, the more I realize how important a strong container is, so that I can feel coherent to go there and stay there as much as possible without flinching, which I flinch anyways, because that's a part of it. So yeah, I hear that. And I wrote about this, I think I wrote about this in my first book, Decomposing the Shadow, but it's definitely a section in the new book I'm writing right now, around the importance of reverence. So reverence, if you break down its meaning, is something to the effect of like to be in respect and fear of a thing. And the respect is something that recognizes this thing as something of value, something worthy of cherishing, or what it offers is worthy of cherishing. And that the fear is recognizing that this thing is such that it will humble you, it can undo you. And so the reverence is a kind of position where, with with a respect that honors the value of the thing, and with a position of recognizing that if you don't humble yourself in advance with the reverence, you're getting humbled no matter what, because that which you revere has the capacity to undo you. There's fear there. And it's not the kind of fear that leads to anxiety loops, or the kind of fear that gets as negative image. It's the kind of fear that you should have, like I should feel a certain amount of fear when I'm going for a solo backpacking or a solo camping trip in the backcountry, or when I'm getting ready to free climb El Capitan. There's an appropriate amount of fear there that calls us to be well prepared. And I think that's the kind of fear that you might be speaking to. It's the kind of fear that I infer, and it's a deeply respectful fear.
Damn right,
it's not,
man.
yeah. And it is with that fear that one can practice courage. Because if you don't feel some sort of fear and then choose to do it anyways, and I'm not encouraging you to do it anyways, anyone listening, because you're afraid, there needs to be a lot of checks and balances and inner assessments and preparations to say, yes, I'm choosing to step beyond my fear. But without there being some kind of fear, there can be no courage.
That's nice. Nice clip. That sounded so sweet. I can't talk like that. But no, the main fear though is the main fear is that come up, because it is squirrely, what it does to your brain, because it feels like, oh my God, but you just, but luckily for that first heroic dose, which I want to hear yours, luckily I had done a lot of homework and, knew that, oh, that's right. No, my brain's being put back together. I know it. because it was a little squirrely. We had the wrong thing on the TV. We had not the wrong thing. Actually, it turned out pretty good, but at first it was squirrely because Las Vegas, Johnny Depp, Fear and Loathing.
Fear and Loathing in Las
And right
Vegas.
as
Yeah.
it started to come up, I look over at the TV and it's the part where they just got to Vegas in the bar and everything's going lizard-like. I'm like, oh shit, oh shit.
Oh, man.
Can you turn that off and turn the music up?
Well, the first time I did mushrooms, I was supposed to do it with my girlfriend at the time. We were, I think, 15 or 16. And she was off on vacation, and some buddies invited me over, and they were like, we got some mushrooms. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And it became a conflict between us, as you'd imagine, me and my girlfriend at the time, that I did it without her. And fair enough. And also, we were teenagers and not exactly the most relationally skillful. But it wasn't exactly the most responsible use either. We just played video games the entire time while their older cousin was there to help keep us safe. But their older cousin also let us go drive a car after, which was super dumb. I didn't drive, but I was like, okay. Anyways, kids, don't drive on mushrooms. Seriously, don't drive on mushrooms. We're lucky that we didn't die or kill somebody.
I got a story. I didn't mean.
But anyways, so when sometime later, this girlfriend of mine said for her birthday, she wanted to do mushrooms at her birthday party and everybody watch Requiem for a Dream.
Whoa.
And I'm not sure if you or your listeners know this, but it is a gut-wrenching movie. My experience of it is that it just rips me apart emotionally. It's so hard. It's such a difficult journey to go through, this movie, with addiction and the pain and the suffering and the tragedy that happens to these people. She hadn't seen it, and I was like, I don't think you should do this. But she was not having any of my suggestions. Like, it's my birthday, I'm gonna do what I want, blah blah blah. You did it without. I was like, ultimately, I was like, okay, I don't want to participate though. Like, I'm not interested in that experience. Anyways, you could pick the wrong movie. I mean, personally, I don't think watching a movie during mushrooms is a great idea.
No.
I once hung out with some
No
people.
more.
We had like a long conversation. This was after I did my whole journey of just solo work with the mushroom. And the mushroom was like, okay, take a break from your solo work, start journeying with others. See how other people do this. Get a sense of how other people are integrating me into their lives. And I hook up with a couple of friends from another town on a visit. And we had a long conversation about it. And everything seemed to be in alignment. So I give it a go. But what I didn't realize is that they wanted to watch a movie. So we were all sitting there just listening to music, and it was coming up, and somebody was like, I'm really feeling it now. And I was like, yeah, me too. And then one other person was like, okay, let's put the movie on. And I was like, what? But I couldn't really say anything or do anything. I'm participating in their thing, and it's at their house. And they put on Horton Hears a Who, the Dr. Seuss. Let me tell you, that is a movie to watch, whether or not to watch it on mushrooms. I was like, it was really difficult. To make it worse, they started smoking cigarettes in the house. I don't smoke cigarettes. And I was like, what's happening? And I was so far away from anywhere that I would have been like 3 hours to walk back to where I was supposed to be. I was kind of stuck there, and just being torn between trying to pay attention and figure out what was happening with this movie while being moved by the movie and irritated by it, but also the mushroom trying to talk to me about stuff and reveal things to me. But I couldn't hear or listen to either. They were both vying for control, while simultaneously I was just really uncomfortable with the smoking in the house and trying to sit close to the window. Oh man, it was. Anyways, kids, don't smoke cigarettes and watch movies while experiencing mushrooms. Yeah, no judgment. I mean, like, these people, they have their way that they experience mushrooms, and it's a positive experience for them. For me, that was not what gave me the space that I needed to feel like I could really connect with the medicine of the thing. And so, as you can imagine, I didn't repeat that experience with that particular group of people again.
I had one where a lady I was seeing, she wanted to do them with me. She'd never done more than just a couple of stems, she said. And so I said, okay, well, here, just to prepare you, you know, you don't have to do as much as me, but just to prepare you, here, we're gonna do it. It was like 3 days out or 2 days out or something. And you know, I sent her a couple of links to Terrence McKenna, I told her if I'm gonna be there around 7:30, don't eat anything after 2 o'clock. It's just in case, because if you eat, if you want to fast a little bit so you don't feel nauseous and it'll be uncomfortable. It's not fun. So try to not eat for a while, for as long as you can. Dude, I show up. Oh yeah, sure. I show up. She opens the door, eating a bowl of chowder.
Oh no.
I'm like, what are you doing? So basically, the whole time, and those mushy, most of my visuals were only when I closed my eyes, and majority of it was black and white and a lot of cards, a lot of playing cards. It was really weird. But basically, she was just kind of, and she didn't do as much as me, but she just kind of balled up, just and I just kind of, it's okay, we're all fine. She was fine. She just wanted to curl up and. Because of her belly. It's like, I told you.
Yeah.
I fucking told you. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's good. General practice of a 4-hour fasting window. Ideally, you're eating vegetarian on that day. Nothing that is too bloating or high glycemic. Nothing that feels particularly heavy. Eat a meal that ideally allows you to have a bowel movement before the journey begins. Like all of these things are, good practice. The experience of psilocybin, it can be, and often is, at least for certain portions, challenging in its own right. Challenging in its own right. And there isn't really much merit in my mind to sort of like in making it more difficult than it needs to be. And a lot of these, like you talked about, strong container and all these preparations, in many respects, this is making sure that it isn't any harder than it needs to be. You're creating a space that allows it to go as smoothly and as safely as possible, so that the turbulence and the challenge that emerges is, what is relevant to the healing work being done, and not necessarily as a consequence of, eating clam chowder an hour before you're going to eat the mushrooms, or being in a room full of people smoking cigarettes and watching Horton Hears the Who, or Hears the Who. Right. So
Yeah, one thing I did find on accident, I think it was after Tim and I's third trip, where I had some leftover. This is when I lived in L.A. and I had Ralph's fried chicken. I used to get once a week, and so it was good fried chicken because it wasn't too greasy, but it was all I'd only get the thighs. I like the dark meat, baby. Anyway, um, I had some left over, and my buddy Tim, he lived down the hall from me in my apartment. He was in the apartment. He was 5 down, just fucking 25 yards away. And we were in his place, and we would always do it in his place because he had Alex Gray stuff on the walls, and he was a tripper before me. He just whatever, forward in. Anyway, he comes back. He didn't have any food, so he's like, I think I have fried chicken. I think I have fried chicken left over as we came down after everything was done. Oh, I got to talk about the pee-pee. And we were like kids eating ice cream when come over. I think I got a bunch. So it was the best fucking fried chicken that both of us ever had. It was, and this is like, we weren't tripping anymore. This was come down in the morning. But
there's a big difference. Big difference than the hour before and the morning after.
Oh yeah, save it. That's one of it's one of those beauties where you just hold off, kind of like an orgasm. It's gonna be better if you hold it the longer you can. Sorry.
Something to be said though too is, it's not uncommon. I notice it in myself even, where the fear or the anxiousness of what's going to come, the anticipatory energy of knowing something is going to happen, and that something is unknowable until it's in it. That anticipatory energy could waver between anxiety and excitement, or both, back and forth. And one way that we as a species, respond or soothe or calm ourselves is to eat. And so eating before the journey might have been a way in which she didn't realize I'm sorry, I assumed it was a she, tried to compensate for the challenge.
She drove a motorcycle,
right?
But it was a she.
Okay, so compensate for the anxiety, which is fair. I mean, growing up, depending on the context. We got bottle when we were stressed, or we got the breast, right? And that's a thing. Like the suckling action between, mother and baby, right? It actually activates a hormonal, but also a nervous system cascade that calms and relaxes the nervous system. The same
Part of the bond.
action that
bonding.
we do when we eat or when we suck on a thing like a cigarette. These are all like these oral fixations. The action of doing a thing with our mouth, a sucking motion, a chewing motion, activates a kind of, oh, I'm close, I'm together. It activates a sense of the nervous system sort of can be more at ease, right? And this is actually one of the reasons. Something interesting is that same system is activated, this bonding system, the one that is activated when you're, at your mother's breast, is activated when we eat, but it is also activated when we eat with each other. And so eating with others is actually a way in which neurobiologically we're triggering a sense of bonding, which may explain why eating together and specifically eating certain foods together is a central staple in almost every human culture. Is like how we share our food and that we get together, like all of our holidays in the Western world are about getting together to eat, and so anyway, something to think about there, something to chew on.
Yo, nice, brother, nice. The pee-pee. Now we go to the pee-pee.
Okay.
Not that I have to yet, but no. I always wondered, when it comes to like the religious stuff, all those things, especially the Jesus stuff. Like the virgin birth thing has bothered me for so long, and it's got to be everybody's first question, and I have to have that explained and they're not doing a very good job of it. So, but then the mushy explained it. Spores don't need seeds. Born in a manger. Pile of cow shit. Died for me so I could chew his ass up and shake, eat of his body, eat of his flesh, and shake hands with the universe and know that I'm eternal. But the other one was the water into wine. Like, what? Oh, well, so if you take, there's two there's two different things. There's got to be a third, of course, because there's always three. I don't know what the third is, but holy water is, huh?
They're mushrooms, water, and heat.
Oh, take a psychedelic mushroom and you don't pick it. Let it grow into the chalice. The chalice that they talk about, the one that's in the fucking church. Anyway, put some water in there for a bit. Let it sit for a bit, and you drink that. It's just like doing the mushy. So those little caps in the church also they put on your tongue. That's representative of a mushroom cap. That's the holy water. And notice that priests and, especially the Pope, look at his clothing. He looks like a fucking mushroom. And there's 2 mushroom fountains in the Vatican along with a pine cone statue and doing this. Anyway, so also, if you consume them, one of the things that I read up on, if you consume, and that's the other thing about fasting and, eating clean before you do it, which I did, so it was nice and clear. If you catch the first bit of the first couple times you pee after you've consumed the mushroom and set it aside, and if your peak starts to come down, when you start feeling, all right, I'm coming down, all right, that was nice, wait, I want to go back up, take that piss and just a shot glass, bing, you're right back up for another 30 minutes.
I'll have to take your word for it.
Holy water. Turn water into wine.
Yeah, hey man, no
That's
judgment, but that's probably not for me.
Well, no, I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm just saying that it works, and that's part of it, and that's one of the representations. That's one of the things about the those fountains with men or boys peeing. The cycle of life, drink of thine own cystine.
Well, I know that with respect to Amanita muscaria, as the reindeer or caribou, as they eat it, I can't remember which way it is. It's muscimol. I think it's ibotenic acid. There are 2 primary psychoactive components in that mushroom: ibotenic acid and muscimol. and I'm pretty sure it's muscimol gets turned into ibotenic acid through a chemical process or a metabolic process, and that when the reindeer eat it, then the ibotenic acid gets converted into muscimol, and the muscimol is excreted or passed through their urine, and it's the muscimol that like both can get you high, but muscimol is the one that's less dangerous for you. Like ibotenic acid is more turbulent. There's a lot of nuance to that I do not feel competent trying to break down. I had a guest on my show recently about microdosing Amanita muscaria, and we go into quite a bit of depth around the difference
What
between
show
these
is
compounds.
that? What show is that, James?
Adventures Through the Mind podcast. You can see up here on this side
That's
here the
right.
little logo. If you're watching this
In the
on
link,
video,
his link is in the description.
yeah. But
All this
with
stuff.
respect
Great
to
website. Great website.
respect to psilocybin, so psilocybin, there are two, we'll say, primary alkaloids in the magic mushroom, psilocybin mushrooms. There's a number of other ones. There's like baeocystine and some ones that I've only read and don't know how to
Didn't
say
I
out
just
loud.
say cysteine?
Oh, well, yeah, you said cysteine, but baeocystine is the name of this other chemical compound. But it was named after, it was discovered and named well after the church used its language. But anyways, there's these two primary ones: psilocin and psilocybin. Okay? Psilocin is the active component, but it degrades very quickly with any type of heat or drying. So when you pick a wild mushroom, I'm just going to eliminate all the other alkaloids and just say you have psilocybin and psilocin. And then you eat it fresh, you get both. If you dry it, heat it, so basically every time anyone has ever had mushrooms that they got in a bag somewhere from somebody that weren't fresh, it's been predominantly, if not exclusively, psilocybin. And what happens is psilocybin is actually a prodrug to psilocin. As soon as it goes into your body, it gets converted to psilocin through a process called dephosphorylation, where a phosphorus group is cut off and it becomes psilocin. And it's done by an enzyme. It's readily available in your stomach, alkaline phosphatase. It's also, from what I understand, present in lemon juice, which is part of what is causing lemon tech to be more potent. It's like it's pre-digesting the mushrooms for you and converting more of the psilocybin into psilocin, so it doesn't have to go through that metabolic process to become active. Now, whether or not psilocybin or psilocin pass through your urine unchanged or change, how much of it passes through before it's fully metabolized into sort of non-active or inactive metabolites or components, I don't know. I read it a long time ago. It's, any of your listeners could look it up. It would be called the pharmacodynamics of psilocybin. But if I do remember correctly, there was some discussion about some of it passing unchanged to the urine, but I don't remember that to be sure.
Oh, come on, man. You were on such a roll. Why are you ending? I'm not ready to talk yet.
Well, you know what I can do is I've got something I want to grab off my bookshelf. 1 second.
Yeah. This is awesome. Yeah, so make sure James's link, his website, easy to navigate. All this stuff is there, the podcast, YouTube, all the different audio versions. His books, you can go get his books.
I'm still looking for it. It's not well organized.
You're all good, homie. I'm right here entertaining the kids. Anyway, hey, there he is.
I also realized, oh wait, I didn't get both of them.
Jesus fucking Christ, man.
I also realized after I walked away that I was like, oh, is my butt crack showing? So, hopefully not.
notice.
I don't know if it's an 18 plus show or not, but
I didn't notice. I'm still looking at that fucking mushy on the wall.
so I'm pretty sure much of what you've been talking about today was represented in this book here.
You're goddamn right. And he's
The Sacred
his
Mushroom
voice
and the Cross.
His voice is on the open.
Yeah,
That's him
John
saying, "Yeah, you're."
M. Allegro.
I'm totally. You can't. I'm never going to be convinced otherwise. I don't. It doesn't matter. I mean, all the way down. You know. Oh, Jesus rose from the dead. Oh, he did. Yeah. Guess where mushrooms come from? They grow out of dead stuff.
Well, you know, hey, Jan Irving would agree with you as questionable as he is as a
That's
as
where
a
that was
scholar.
part of my start back in
Yeah.
2005.
Oh, his
The
whole work on the Trivium was
the
fantastic. Really,
what the hell was
uh,
it? The Jan and his buddy. They did I can't say it. And then they did a different. I watched the 4 hour slide version. I can't say it because my buddy Jeff Clark, who turned me on to this, who at first I said, dude, please stop with this Jesus mushroom stuff. I don't, and then I went, oh, okay. But Pharmacratic Inquisition. And then after that, and then all of a sudden it started getting a little heat, and then I remember they trimmed it up to like almost a little over 90 minutes, almost like Zeitgeist style, because Zeitgeist had hit. The movie Zeitgeist had hit, and I was into that too. I was one of the
oh man,
OG.
that was a huge impact in my sort of community. I think
I wonder if that's where we first heard of each other. Were you part of the
I
Zeitgeist movement?
I wouldn't say I was a part of the movement. It
Oh,
definitely had impact on me. I think
Jacques
was it
Fresco.
the third one was the one that I felt like really held. Well, I haven't watched it in a while, but it was the one that sort of held its own the most over time. Sort of like had the most. What's the term where it's like it aged the
Aged.
best, if I understand. But I want to
Yeah,
go
the
back to a
second one.
question you had
Yeah.
about my first heroic dose.
hmm
I don't remember entirely, but one stands out to me, and it was with two friends who I had met not that long ago. They had been friends for a while, and they had both sort of separately from me been discussing about like, I think I'd like to have a psychedelic experience with James. Like they would journey together, and we literally had a sit down meeting
Choo
between the
choo
three of us
train.
to talk about like,
Sorry.
does it make sense? Does this feel good? Like would we, journey well together? Would it feel safe and positive and so on and so forth? And we ended up moving forward and having a 5 gram journey. And I actually wrote about it in this book here. It's my second book, The True Light of Darkness. So I won't tell the
Nice.
story. I won't really tell the story here. I'll leave people to read it. I think I tell it better in the book anyways. But that was a really powerful experience. The two books that I have that have been released, one of them presents my sort of theory, my you say like scholarly or a scholarly style. It's like an essay on my theory around working with psilocybin mushrooms with respect to emotional well-being. And I like to call it like the objective, like the skeleton of the thing. And then my second book tells 3 of my own stories working with mushrooms with the lens of the first book as the way in which I understand and make sense of these experiences. So in that way, I would say that they're almost like 2 sides of the same content, one of which is the objective skeleton side of the thing, the other of which is the subjective living body of the thing. Yeah. So I tell one of the stories I tell in this book, The True Light of Darkness, is my first, well, not first, but like a 5 gram trip. The title of the story is 2 Friends, 5 Dried Grams, and a Box from Cusco, Peru.
Fuck. Love it. But you're not going to tell it.
No. Hey, look, man. Also, honestly, my entire income is
Yeah.
dependent on people supporting my podcast through Patreon or
What's it
voluntary
like to
donation
have
and
that?
selling books.
What's it like to have that? I only have a few whips. I call them the Waning Interest Podcast Pack. I only have a few because I don't. If you've watched a few of mine, the last one I watched of yours, by the way, was the Indigenous thing, which I wanted to get to. Help bring me back to that.
Belinda Aracho. Is
And
that
the
right?
other and the other guy and the older guy,
Oh
the
no. Okay, so that was
the 2 people.
4 Arrows and Darshan Narvaez. That's
Well,
a
because of
beautiful book.
that,
I
like,
don't know if you got your hands on it, but it's a beautiful book. I
well, the
highly
indigenous
recommend.
thing is like for me, especially because with the mushroom. But speaking of the Zeitgeist thing, Venus Project, No Money World, that whole thing with to take the tech that we have that doesn't all go to the military-industrial complex, put it on us. So because we could create a superabundance where nobody would steal. There would be no reason to steal. Boy, that's a better world. To do that would be to take the tech, not this system that we have, a different system with the tech, but with the indigenous ideas on top. The people that have been around the longest that don't fuck up their shit. And why do they not fuck up their shit? They've been around so long, and they seem like and they're good people because they trip. That's their religion. All
Well,
of them.
they have,
Whatever
they have
their regional
regular
psychedelic.
healing ceremonies.
Right.
They have ceremony. It might be plant medicine, but it could also be a number of different
There's other
ways
things
in
that
which they come together and journey. Yeah.
right. But also, like to me, also it's obvious that Sweet 16, Bar Mitzvah, Quinceañera, all that stuff. Our ancestors, that what you did was trip with them. You tripped with the elders to become an adult. That's why when you indigenous people, you meet a 20-year-old indigenous person, they're 20 years old physically, but mentally they're like 50 already, and they're wise as shit. Why is that? Because they trip a couple times with their people a year, and they don't fuck up their stuff, and they keep their ego, and that's why they don't fuck everything up.
Yeah, age. What do they call it? Rites of initiation at different times of aging is obviously something that was integrated in most traditional cultures, if not all of them, prior to. I guess we have a kind of tradition. Even like the Western material consumer culture is a kind of tradition, but the sort of older traditions, ours is lacking. But
ours comes from those traditions comes from the bankers.
Well, our society actually thrives on what's called neoteny. Neoteny is, you would be familiar with neoteny because chances are the majority of maybe your dogs, depending on what you're into, but for a lot of people, you would be familiar with neoteny because dogs are cultivated in order to have them maintain childlike traits in adulthood, which is that you want a dog to be cuddly and fluffy and cute and all the rest of this, right? That's not the trait of a fully developed wild dog, which is the wolf. Like all domestic species of dogs are one species, Canis lupus familiaris, which is a offset of the Canis lupus, the gray wolf. So all of these dogs are the same species, and they've been selectively bred for their various traits and attributes. And one of the things that dogs tend to be bred for is, of course, behavior. And oftentimes we want dogs that don't act like wolves, they act like puppies, right? So neoteny is the process by which animals, we'll say, are reared or cultivated to maintain adolescent or childlike behaviors into adulthood. That is what we do. How many 45-year-old children have you met? Probably a lot, right? And that's
How
a
about this
that's a consequence of
52-year-old child
well, there's a difference between childlike and
goofball.
childish, if you imagine. Like there's a difference between being able to drop in the childhood wonder of a thing and acting like an entitled 6-year-old, right?
Yeah.
So this is what I mean by that. And I genuinely believe that it is advantageous to the way things are to keep people emotionally adolescent or childish because you're easier to be manipulated if that's the case. And that's not to say that there's some big grand conspiracy to manipulate people, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that isn't the case. But what I am saying is that from a consumer capitalist culture, people who are easily triggered or manipulated to buy or follow trends are going to serve that culture more effectively as the sort of agents of consumption. And so I do think that there's a strong component there. I think there's a lot of ignorance in that too. Not like there's probably some malevolence in there, but I think a lot of it is ignorance as a consequence of multiple sets of generations of people who have been completely detached from the absolute necessities of human flourishing being provided to them in childhood and in culture.
Damn, son. Drop that. Bam! I wish I had my Lisa laugh. Whoa! Fucking A right. That's the other thing, yeah. With a system that I mentioned, you're talking about the system that I mentioned. That's what would happen in that tech society, Star Trek-ish, with the indigenous ideas on top. Kids are gonna be fucking brilliant at 5 years old. Every one of them. Imagine the fucking music that would come out of the world if every kid was really, and it wasn't put like a push, and it wasn't as stupid. Everybody's musical. Everybody can sing, even though they think they can't. Everybody can play. You just have to have that time, And if you can play, if you could sit there and have a few hours of practice and know that you don't have to, oh, but I got to pay bills, because that's the other thing. Everybody, their bills and all the bullshit they got to pay for is in their head. Well, I got to think about that, so I can't really concentrate on trying to learn the piano. Fucking, it's got to go. It's got to go. Better world. Better, more music. Man, imagine how many fucking Jim Morrisons would come out of the world.
Well, something to think about is now I only know this from watching a short video essay about it. So this is, as far as I can tell, third-hand information. So take it with a shaker full of salt here. But
Damn, a
I
whole
watched
shaker.
watched an
lot.
interesting video about why it is that it was about nepo babies. Nepotism is when someone gets promoted or given job opportunities or professional opportunities based on who they're related to rather than by merit of their skills. And that the whole premise was around why it is as a culture we dislike all these sort of like nepo babies, so like superstar kids who are superstars because their parents were superstars. And that's actually existed the entire time that superstars have been a thing culturally, since all the way back to the first movie stars and so on and so forth. But we really dislike them now. The proposition is because the way society is presently structured and where our socioeconomic context exists is that it's really only people who are the children of rich artists that actually have the time and capacity to cultivate their artistic professionalism, and not to mention opportunities. And that's because we don't have those opportunities provided to us by the state. In fact, we have the opposite, which you just spoke to. This video went on to describe like post-World War II United States and England for a couple of decades had a very strong welfare state where there were a lot of people who didn't actually really need to work a job, but they could and did and want to do the things that they cared about. And that's when you got all sorts of insane advances in art and music, because people who were inclined towards artistic merit or artistic endeavors really had the opportunity to experiment and try new things. Like all of the music that we love from like the, say, 60s, for example, 60s, 70s, all of that had to do with the sort of the social security state, the social security state that got completely dismantled by Ronald Reagan, and I think it was Margaret Thatcher that came in. Also, fun story, the United States had already started moving towards sustainable energy in the 60s. There were solar panels on the roof of the White House. The president at the time, Jimmy Carter, who was like basically a nuclear physicist, was like, something is coming. Climate change is coming down the pipeline and it's going to absolutely disrupt our society. And we need to start making changes now so it doesn't screw us in 50 years. And he was going up against Ronald Reagan, who was like, no, we need to eliminate all prohibition and like basically eliminate all of the limits we have on industry, industry and advertising and all these things, so that, and especially oil, so that we could make America great again. Now, I'm not entirely certain of that, but I'm pretty sure that the first person to say that was Ronald Reagan, and he won, and he eliminated all sustainability and environmental sustainability programs, basically took away all the legislation that prevented things from like open mining, all these things that the consequences we're in now.
He was a corporate cunt.
Where we are now is in many ways a consequence of the worldwide impact of Ronald Reagan winning out over Jimmy Carter. We'd be in a world probably closer to what you're talking about.
It started before that, but he put it started before that, but he put a fucking he put a brick on the gas pedal.
Yeah, totally.
But with all this banking stuff and this corporate shit, back to another movie. Explain this to me, brother. One of the most famous stories of all, where this rich, crotchety cunt all of a sudden has this experience where he has a ghost of Christmas past and this all the president, all these things, all this trippy stuff, weird, where he's standing there and other people can't see him while he's observing things happening. And then all of a sudden, after this is over, he wants to help everyone and give all of his money away. Sounds like an ayahuasca or an ibogaine trip to me.
I would say more like ibogaine, probably. There was not nearly enough colors in that story to suggest it was ayahuasca.
Fucking man. And those writers back then, because of the time, because they didn't have all the distractions we have today, a lot of those great writers that wrote this stuff, they were trippers, man. They were drinkers, and a lot of them were
I
trippers.
highly doubt any of them took ibogaine at the time. From what I understand, back during the writing of that book, ibogaine was exclusively
Well, he knew some
existing
stuff.
in
He
West
knew some stuff.
Africa. And
He knew some stuff somehow.
I don't even think,
He
from
knew
an
something.
ethnobotanical perspective, that had even been discovered by Western
Right.
world yet. But nonetheless, this is the
But
thing: is that
somehow,
that
but he had the time to read other things that would come around, where other people didn't have access to information. But go ahead, sorry.
yeah, and great stories feel great and remain great because they touch on something deeper than their content, right? Than the sort of explicit manifestation or presentation of the content. It's touching into something deeper. This is the whole, you said the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces, or what was his other book? I got it on the wall there. Whatever his other big book,
Which is what Star Wars
the Power of Story,
based on
the
his
Power of
stuff,
Story.
Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
Lucas. But go ahead, sorry.
So I mean, in some respect, like these movies, I think specifically A Christmas Carol, these kinds of stories, it's like they didn't need to actually have any kind of journey with any psychedelic or psychoactive substance in order to tap into this something deeper, that is a part of the very nature of being human, of having this sort of expression of consciousness with or without plants involved. And maybe he tapped the vein on that, or sort of like tapped the line unbeknownst to him in advance. Maybe there was some experimentation with substances, but it's more likely that there's something much deeper that those substances reveal to us than it is that that they connect us to or an expression of, than it is that the substances themselves are inspiring the deeper thing, that they are actually an expression of the deeper thing, not the other way around.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily the other way around.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And when you do like you said, with the 1,000 Faces thing, reminded me of one of the other things I'd listened to. Thanks to Zeitgeist, thanks to Peter Joseph, I was reminded of who Krishnamurti was. So I had Krishnamurti books. I had a few. When I left LA, I gave all my books to the library. Most of them anyway, not my Doug Stanhope books. I had 3 of his books. I had The Power of Now. I read that a couple of times.
Wait, The Power of Now is Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm going through all the people that I was getting into with the spiritual stuff. I had The Power of Now, and I got we still got 30 minutes. I should tell you my my pop story. That's kind of like what his had. Alan Watts, and Alan Watts explained it the best to me. It's the simplification of all the spiritual stuff about you're anything you harm, you're harming yourself, and you're like, yeah, whatever. I mean, because we're taught we're separate when we're not.
Mm-hmm.
What Alan Watts said, and it made it more clear after becoming a tripper, a bigger tripper anyway. With a thing about how he talks about think of it like your eye, how everything's backwards in your eye, and then what we perceive, right? You know how it's all backwards back here, and when it comes out, it's how it's that whole, I don't remember.
It gets turned around in the brain.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing right now. Like where you're sitting right now, you're not, I'm you. So basically you're always looking in the mirror. Mm-hmm. We're taught that we're separate. You're way over there in that, what is it? Were you Russia? I'm kidding. You're there. I'm here. That's
presently broadcasting
there.
From the Kremlin.
Were you the one that took down the drone?
Oh God, that was me. I've been working out, man. I just like, I got my bear friend to throw me up there. No disrespect to Russian culture people here.
I fucking love Russia, man. They won World War II. Remember? Anyway, I'm so sick of the Russian.
Not happy with
not stupid.
not happy with the decisions that their government is presently making in any
That's
way.
because of us, though. That's our fault.
No, well, I
But
don't, I don't know.
wouldn't.
I don't know that to be the case, but I definitely know that
There's
I don't hold it
tons of
against
proof.
the Russian,
We
the
cooed
Russian
them.
people.
Yeah, it's a proxy war. We're trying to. We did that. We poked the bear. We're the ones with 875 bases around the world. Russia's not. Anyway, what was I saying? Shit. Fuck. What was I saying? Sorry, I didn't mean to
Talking
get off on that little political rant.
That's okay. How can we not? It's such a hot topic.
Yeah,
It's a hot topic. We
I
all
know.
got hot takes, right?
Yeah, I know. And we're always the United States is the bad guy. But what was it? I was saying different. In the mirror. We're taught, and it certainly seems correct, and it is in a version of way that we're separate. There is a scientific separation, using that word instead of a better word that you would use. There's a separation, but in actuality, and what psychedelics help you understand, is that you're always looking in the mirror. I'm you. You're me. I'm looking at me at all times. When I'm looking, I got two squares here. There's that douchebag that says Wayness, and there's James. But I'm all of it. Same thing, flip it over. It's all you. We're one. It's all one. But we're looking at it all separate, but we're all one big brain.
Hmm.
Looking in the mirror thing. It was like the most beautiful spiritual thing I ever heard. It was like, oh, how simple is that? Thanks for simplifying. Jesus, I've been, Krishnamurti is real simple, but also at the same time, you gotta, sometimes your brain goes a little, oh God, he's so good and deep, and whoa, you really gotta turn your head, I fucking love that guy so much. God, I love that guy.
There's something
I'm gonna go
about
watch some more. I haven't watched him in a while. Now I've said that, I'm gonna go watch him.
There's something about there's the things that he's saying. Krishnamurti. I think about this with respect to other spiritual teachers, but
just to throw this up before you're going to talk about Krishnamurti, so have you watched him and Dr. Alan Anderson videos that are on YouTube from the 70s? There's like 7 or 8 of them, and they're all an hour on a certain subject, like death. Oh God, they're so fucking awesome. And Alan Anderson is so cool, dude. Alan Anderson is such a badass. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Well,
you know what?
I
gotta pee. Okay. So this is your turn to talk.
This will be strange, but I'll do my best.
Too much tea for my pee.
Hello, everybody else. That there's what they're saying, what Jiddu Krishnamurti is saying on the content level. But that content level, he can say these things because he thinks about it in a certain way. And that in order to understand what he's saying, we need to learn how to think in the way that he does. And by this, I mean that what kind of thinking is necessary to recognize the conclusions that he's coming to is as much a part of the learning as is understand like the actual content of what he's saying. So there's almost like the thinking level, the process level of thinking, and then there's a content level of conclusion. And that in order to understand the conclusion, we're asked to do a sort of process level learning to shift the way we think in order to understand that conclusion. And that there's 2 layers of learning there. And that I find that present. I find that present with Jiddu Krishnamurti. Similarly, I find that present with Stephen Jenkinson, and I found it present with a number of other writers as well. I guess it's present with all sorts of writers, but there's definitely literature and various forms of writing, nonfiction writing, that doesn't ask you to think differently. It writes to you in the same way you would just generally think, an average way of thinking, and presents new content. Anyways, it was weird trying to do that, Wayne, without you here, and I'm not certain I made sense because I was also battling. I was in a dynamic with another part of me that was like, you're not talking to anybody, man. Like, what are you doing?
I love that, man. That's what I do all the time. Thank you for saying babble, by the way, because you are on the Babbling Dabbler podcast. No, one of my favorite things is when I go pee. When I watch it back for quality, make sure everything's okay. That's the best part. Is I get to go look and see what happened when I was gone. And I'm sure, dude, you are a crusher, man. You fucking explain everything so well, and you do it.
We'll
Dude,
see.
you're like
We'll
the
see.
complete opposite of me. This is almost like we'd actually be a good if we had a radio show, like a morning type show. You'd be the driver, and I'd be the wise ass that would just pop in every once in a while, go blah blah blah. But you'd be the one, steering the ship. We'd be a badass team, I think. Let's say,
Well-
hey, all you James's patrons and the Whips. I think you guys should do something and start asking for it. That'd be neat. Who knows?
Suppose if we get enough attention for it, something to think about.
Damn, dude, you're so good. I can't wait to hear what you just said. But if it was about Krishnamurti, I know I'm gonna even love it more.
It was utilizing learning what Krishnamurti is talking about as an example of the sort of various levels of things that are happening in any given moment, and specifically, and that there's learning that could be present on any one of these levels, learning or experience on any one of these levels. And specifically, I spoke to the content level of what is being spoken about, and the process level, which is like how it's, what thinking is informing what is being spoken about, and that there's a kind of learning that can be present where we engage the necessity of learning on that process level in order to comprehend or to learn what's on the content level as well. So that might actually be far too abstract to really make sense without having heard what I said before.
No, dude, I get it.
Yeah. But
And if the whips get it, it's fucking great. That's one of the nicest. I'm sure you can say the same thing, to where, because a lot of people don't get what I've been saying for many years. I don't blame them, because like I said, when Oliver Madley Clark first came to me with that Jesus mushroom stuff, I kicked him out of my studio twice. Like, dude, come on, I got work to do. But when he said the virgin birth thing, I was like, so that's why I always try to start with that for people, because I know that's our first question when you're a kid. Like, what? How does that work? Whatever.
well, you just tell your kid like, oh, that's just a holdover from the old Sumerian myth that much of the Jesus myth is founded upon. And they'll be like, oh, Sumeria. Okay, cool. That explains everything. Wayne, you're having way too much fun right now, man. I didn't know podcasts were allowed to be this fun.
Oh, goddamn right. They're supposed to be. That's why this is my fun. This is my night out, I don't go out drinking anymore. Stop that, and I can't stand being around a lot of folks and listening to. I can't be around a lot of alcohol. If I'm gonna be around a drunk, it's got to be me. And I don't talk. I'm home alone a lot, so I don't talk much. So this is like my term to, shoot the shit with somebody. I don't even get on the phone much with people, and if I do, of course, I dominate the conversation, kind of like I am right now, huh?
Do you find like you listen to that podcast interview I had with 4 Hours and Darshan Narvaez, a big part of that was around the absolute necessity of connection as like an essential nutrient for human thriving. Do you find that you're getting some expression of that need for the nutrient of connection through podcast interviews?
Absolutely. Yeah, finding your kin, finding that like you when I used to watch all the Rogan podcasts, it was almost always hoping they were going to start talking about psychedelics.
Sure.
That's all. That's really what fun, laughs or whatever, and sometimes with the guest or whatever. But a lot of time, I'm talking like 5 years ago. I don't watch them all. I rarely watch Rogan's podcast anymore.
Well, the dude puts out like 7 a week or something. It's kind of crazy, and they're all like 4 hours long.
It used to be that, but they're some of them are good. And I worked with Joe back in 2007. That was it. Oh, part of my fucking journey he was part of my journey. I forgot about this part. After Jeff and the Jesus mushroom stuff, right? That's at Premier Radio Networks where I worked. I was a engineer, board op engineer there, and I worked with a bunch of shows that you've probably heard of. It was 2007, and Rogan was doing he was pimping Shiny Happy Jihad, his album at the time. And he was doing an interview to pimp it with somebody on XM, but he didn't want to do it over the phone. They wanted it to sound like this. They wanted to, sound like we're in the same room. So we have to have, back then it was, you needed to go somewhere where they had an ISDN line, which is how voiceover stuff used to be done as well. A very expensive phone line that makes it sound like, like we have today. It was like, oh, people spent so much money back then. It's so sad. I didn't. I almost did a few times. Like, Jesus, fuck that, man. Anyway, so I was given the gig of engineering that for him and hooking up the thing with, XM. It turned out the guy that he was going to be getting interviewed by was somebody I worked with in Florida in radio, who is now in DC on XM. Anyway, and what did Joe do? Almost the whole time talked about fucking DMT. And Joe and I share a birthday. He's 3 years older, but we share a birthday. So all synchronicities. I told you, when I was, stalking you, trying to get you on the podcast. Synchronicities is a big thing where like if I'm doing a solo one and I'm just babbling, I babble for 90 minutes or whatever, 2 hours sometimes 4, just by myself. As I talk, I start finding as I'm just going off, it's all, I have just bullet points. I have nothing really written except for sometimes some jokes. But I just start finding all these synchronicities, and that's one of the, it's kind of like a trip. Because part of the fun of mushroom trips are, it seems like, deja vus happen very rarely now. As you get older, they rarely happen, but they used to happen, a few times a year. You'd have, whoa, deja vu, right? In a trip, for me, trips to me, mushroom trips anyway, are, it's very reminiscent of deja vus, like extended deja vus. I had one with Tim after Tim moved out of the building that we both lived in, where I first met him. He moved down to Long Beach. I've never spent time in Long Beach. Go down to trip with him, and on July 4th, and we were gonna trip the next night because that when we got down there, we were gonna go to his parents and his family's house. His mom is like my California mom. So we're just gonna do a little bit just to see that night because we didn't want to go blast it with all these people. So and then we go downstairs and go out on the beach because you can't smoke in his building at all, not even on the balcony. And I'm standing there on the beach. Never been on this fucking beach before. I'm looking at the Queen Mary, and then also an island that's basically a dump right there in Long Beach. And Tim starts walking past me over to a spot, and I'm like, whoa, I'm having a deja vu. And he keeps walking, and then he starts talking over there. I'm like, this deja vu ain't stopped yet. I've never been here, man. This is fucking wild. It was like a 20-second deja vu, when usually it's what, 3 seconds?
I've actually, I've had a number of, I don't know if it feels most full to share this. So I've had a number of deja vu experiences in my life where I've had a number where I'm just like, whoa, this is wild. And then it's over. But then I've also had experiences where it was like so clear to me that I had dreamed this before. Like maybe a year or two previously that I had dreams. And it was always in places where I realized I've never been here before. It's not that I've ever been here before. It's that I had a vision of this exact thing happening. And so it was different than deja vu in that way. And that has happened to me a handful of times. And I've always taken it as a sort of like a sign that I'm on the right path. Like, for example, I can't remember what airport it was, but some airport in Europe I was going through on a part of my first international book tour. And I realized like, whoa, I dreamed this exact corridor, this exact hallway, this exact moment, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago before I had even, like, this is when I was like, I'm going to travel the world, but I had absolutely no connections or reason or like logical sort of steps in line that would enable me to do that successfully. Like it was literally at least a year out before I even fathomed it being actually possible. Before that, it was just like a fingers crossed, this is my goal kind of thing. And realizing that I had had a dream about being in that exact airport. There's a couple other instances that aren't sort of like coming up right now to mind that I could speak to. But yeah, definitely something that I have noticed is as I've gotten older, what I've noticed is as I've gotten sort of con- confined by the pandemic, this has happened less. When my world got smaller and smaller and smaller, while the sort of immensity and dread of the outside world got bigger and bigger and bigger, that it happened less for me. And then in January of last year, I had a car accident. I was a passenger in a car accident, sustained a head injury. So even as things were fully opening up and I was just about ready to step back off out onto the world, I spent quite a bit of time trying to be able to hear sounds and look at lights without recoiling in pain and distress, and even be able to formulate sentences was a challenge for a while there. Obviously, I'm feeling better generally, and I might pay a price for this podcast later because I really have brought a lot, and then my cognitive energy drops off real fast after a certain point. But yeah, I still feel that sort of like confinement, like the sort of shrinking or collapsing of the world, of my personal world, disconnecting me from this sort of deeper golden thread of meaning or purpose, as the walls literally and figuratively have closed in around me, and the world outside got larger and larger in its scope of dread and collapse. And that's not to say that that's not a real feeling, or that it's an illusion, or even that it's correct, but that I've noticed that as that happened, I definitely felt that the recognition, or the conscious acknowledgement of what is happening, being a part of a larger sort of like journey that I'm on, that is all in service to the old quote of like, the greatest gift that you can offer onto the world is already manifest in your being you, or something to this effect. That I have to like consciously remind myself that that's the case. That I'm getting
Which
a
is
call
why you
from a
wanna
lawyer.
be good, like ET said, be good.
Sure.
You
Yeah. So
what?
something.
Are they cheap? Because I need one for my workers' comp thing.
No. It's I don't want to talk about it online. It's nothing. It's not.
They work
It's
pro
nothing
bono.
serious. No, I don't think so. It's nothing serious. But anyways, gotta wanting to get a better understanding of the actual legal landscape of podcasting as it continues to grow. But that's an aside.
Well, then I'll
So
get. Then you after you pay for that, and then you hand it down to me. Because obviously I'm going to help you explode even bigger with this being on my podcast, the smallest click on the internet. But
yeah,
the
so
funnest, it's also the fucking funnest.
I'm having a good time. I'm
I'm
having a
glad.
good time. Actually, the only other time I've been on StreamYard was also for another podcast that was explicitly more comedy, called Born Under Punches. And they're all sort of like funny comedians, but what they end up doing is having guests, and they do a tabletop role play. So like on top of being on this podcast, and they do some sort of exercise that's both funny but also gives me as a guest an opportunity to actually talk to what I'm doing. Then we play tabletop role play and go through what is effectively like a kind of Dungeons and Dragons thing that they custom make for the guest, or like custom make a character for me or something. It's pretty fun.
What's it called again?
Born Under Punches.
Born Under Punches. I already like it from the title. That's pretty awesome. Seriously though, where are you? You're in Canada somewhere, I can tell.
I'm in. You can tell, eh? Oh yeah, here I'm just up in Canada, eh? But yes, I'm in Kitchener, Ontario, Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. Yeah.
It's funny because I'm in Maine, and I've got I decided to try the Facebook dating thing. Dude, 60% of all the things that pop up, even though I've got the setting for 20 miles away, it's all, and I'm nowhere near Quebec, but it's almost all 60% Quebec ladies coming up. I'm like, damn, man, is somebody trying to tell me something?
Well, I don't know. Maybe the app already knows how many beautiful people there are in Quebec. Quebec
that's the thing.
A beautiful place.
Yeah, that's the thing that sucks is I can't hit like because like it's too far away. I ain't traveling. Fuck that, man. I don't even like going to the store.
So you said Maine. I actually I started reading this book from a woman who I've had on my show, Rachel Harris. I started reading it today, and it's called Swimming in the Sacred Wisdom from the Psychedelic Underground. And she does a series of interviews with women who have been in the sort of psychedelic or plant medicine ceremonial underground for like their whole careers, like these basically like grandmothers of the
Claire.
work. Well, I don't know Claire, but I'll assume that
She's
you
one of those
think she
Ibogaine
puts some-
queens.
Well, anyway, so Rachel talks about living on a small island off the coast of Maine. I just read this morning, and this line, there's this bit. I want to read it to you because it's just so gorgeous.
Cool ending to the podcast.
A clear day early in summer, and the azure blue sky expands forever, a celestial dome. We take the sky for granted, forget that it's ethereal as light. It's the expansiveness of the sky that somehow reaches down to the physicality of Earth in the center of my chest. I take a big breath to stretch the boundaries of my heart, but reach the limits way too soon. Not quite, quote, as above, so below. I yearn for the spaciousness of the sky to enter into my heart and carry me into the celestial realms. How beautiful is that?
Jeez,
That's
dude.
so gorgeous. Like I read that this morning and I'm like, this is just the introduction. I'm like, this is so beautiful. What a woman with such a beautiful heart. I'm very excited. The book is called Swimming in the Sacred Wisdom from the Psychedelic Underground from Rachel Harris. You could check out, she's been on a couple of my podcasts. You could search her name on my website, but highly recommend. I'm not sure if I don't know if it's released yet actually, but I think it releases this month. So it might actually be out now if your listeners are interested in that
Harris.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Is
Swimming
she
in the
single?
Sacred by Rachel Harris. I don't know.
I couldn't help it.
Anyways, nothing like being on a podcast and finishing it off with a quote from somebody else's book.
That's what we do here. That's what we do here. Because, no ads. I'm a no ad guy. I used to be a voice guy. And I fucking hate commercials now. If I walk into a house and somebody's got their TV on and they don't mute when the commercials come on, I'm like, you have a problem. You
just start tearing up the place. You literally
have a
carry a
problem.
mini baseball bat
so-
everywhere you go just to
so-
smash up televisions.
I became part of the crap. Yeah, oh, Jesus. What the hell was my point? Oh,
Ads.
so I was all, and I was in a few commercials, but I've voiced many and stuff. So now I'm anti. So I don't do commercials. I will never do commercials on this podcast. I will never any of that shit. But when you watch some of them, they're like, if the shit that I talk about, I'm like, that sounds like a commercial for that podcast. That's what I do. I do commercials for other people's shit, not for corporate crap. Well, sometimes.
So you won't mind if I speak positively of my show and direct people towards my podcast and books and websites as a part of the ending of this episode?
No, yeah, absolutely no. And they know that the Whips know that his everything that you want is right there in his the link is right there. The top link is right there in the description everywhere this podcast is. And he's got a great site I've already said it before. It's easy to navigate and you got everything there. It's fucking brilliant. It's real sweet. Can you do mine? I don't have one.
Do your
That's
website?
that's how anti.
Man, I barely
am.
managed to get my website. It was a lot of work. I do.
I used to
I
have
mean,
one, but I dropped
you would know this. I assume you're a one-person operation, but it's a lot of work having a regular podcast. I do all the research. I don't just like sometimes it's not much reading, but sometimes I'm reading entire books. Like I want to prepare to research this guy. This is the book I got to read before I do. So it's like I do all the reading, the research, then the schedules, administration, web development, blog making, design, post-production. Then there's the actual interviewing, reviewing. And then I also need to there's management of all my tech gear and the whole production side of things and having to constantly upgrade and learn those things. Plus I'm scholarly, so I also have to be doing my own reading. And now I'm back to writing my book. So there's all that. It's a lot of work.
Thank you for explaining that for my mom better than I could.
It's a lot of work.
But it's
so
fun.
I'm not going to do your website. Is basically what I'm getting at.
That's okay, because
I don't have time.
That's all
man.
right, because I don't fucking want one. I don't even want one. That's why I don't have one. I used to. I had my website when I was a voice guy and my actor, and when I was doing all that stuff. But anyway, we were coming down to, we got 15 seconds left. The open's gonna come along, and dude, this has been a blast. This is my favorite podcast ever so far, and that's saying a lot, because I got some good shit, but so do you. Check this guy out, people. Whips, go check this guy out. Everything he does.
Thanks,
is,
Wayne. I had a lot of fun. I wanted to say that before it comes in. I had a lot of fun.
I'm glad. Yeah, it's I was, and it was funny because at the beginning of it, I was all, I don't know if this is gonna work because of the camera stuff. But anyway, watch James Corbett, all this stuff. Look for yourself. I'm just a fun babbling lecturer or a dabbler. Remember, all Neo, aka One Sorry Ran Long, had to bump comedian Ron White. Thanks, Gary. Woo! That was good, huh? Messing with my peoples. Daddy loves you.